Welcome to Health Focus. I'm your host, Dr. Scott Anderson. September is Healthy Aging Month. This is an awareness month that has been embraced by numerous publications and organizations. So we thought here on Health Focus it would be appropriate to really dwell on this issue for this month. And in fact, the population of the United States is aging, as is the case in many Western industrialized societies, in Japan and China and many countries. And this poses many potential challenges in terms of public policy, in terms of health, in terms of the well-being of our elders. You know, when we first started with Social Security in the 1930s under President Roosevelt, for every one person who managed to live long enough to retire and get Social Security benefits, there might be 2 or 3 dozen people in the workplace. Today, that ratio is dropping to perhaps 3 to 1. And even though it's supposed to be a pay-as-you-go system, obviously there are economic implications of that. Similarly, there are many implications just in terms of having so many people living into their senior years and finding health and well-being in those years. Remember that in the early 20th century, for example, around the year 1900, the average American only lived to be about 49 years old. Now in some demographic groups, the average age could be well into the mid or late 80s. Women tend to live a bit longer than men, typically by about 7 years, which is something we're going to discuss. But we want to do the best we can as a society to support our elders and their families, and that's why we're focusing now on Healthy Aging Month. To address these concerns, we're joined by Rochelle Sherlock. Really delighted to have you here.
Thank you.
Ms. Sherlock is someone who has a tremendous history of public service. She is a founding member of the Solano Commission for Women and Girls, which perhaps you'll tell us a bit about later, and also a founding member of 100 Women Who Care in Solano County. So whether you're in Yolo County or Solano County, certainly, Rochelle, you've made a huge contribution to helping health awareness in these locations. If I may call you Rochelle.
Please.
So do you have any thoughts on the health concerns and just general societal issues that we should be thinking about during Healthy Aging Month? And can you tell us a little bit about how you got interested in the health and well-being of elders and others?
Absolutely. So first of all, I got interested in the health and well-being of elders, as people as we age, primarily in my role as a consultant to the Senior Coalition of Solano County. And I was not raised with grandparents, so I didn't really have a perspective on what it means to age healthy and the importance of family and kind of society in that process. So during this time, as I was this consultant, I learned a lot about aging, and I learned that healthy aging actually starts when we're young. We need to start working on and be cognizant of our health in our 20s, 30s, 40s, right? And pay attention to those long-term benefits.
And I understand you're also active with a group called Potentiate. Can you tell us a little bit about your work there?
Sure. That's my company, my consulting company.
Okay.
It's an organizational effectiveness consulting company to really help organizations and leaders become much more effective in their work and to make a better impact on their mission.
And I believe you did graduate studies at George Washington. I was at Georgetown, so we may have crossed paths.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your graduate studies.
Yeah. So, you know, I was interested in organization development and human development for a couple of reasons. One is I am very mission driven and I want to make a difference in this world. And I found early on in my professional career that I was confined to making that difference based on the organization that I was in. If the organization wasn't supportive or wasn't functional, wasn't able to have the right resources and come together and the right leadership and vision to make the kind of impact that I wanted to make, then that impeded my ability to do it as an individual. So I got my master's degree in organization development and then went to George Washington really for that purpose of like, how can we make our institutions, and in this case with healthy aging, our healthcare institutions, our social services institutions, healthier, more functional, more effective in making an impact on both individual and community outcomes.
Okay, I'm loving this dialogue because my background is in treating older people as a rheumatologist and geriatrician, and it sounds like your background is really multidisciplinary,
Yes.
Kind of in public policy and social sciences. Where I have some background there too, but you're really involved in public policy and bringing people together, organizational awareness and efficiency. And certainly we need to get better organized. For example, let's talk about dementia.
Okay.
The statistics are really astounding when you talk about people over age 85. A significant proportion, some have suggested more than a third, have some evidence of cognitive impairment. So from the medical side, we need to try to find better treatments and earlier diagnosis and support not just individuals with these problems, but their families. What can we do from a societal or organizational side to address these issues?
I think there's a lot we can do. First of all, dementia has a lot of hereditary factors that contribute to it, but there are also, some of the research shows that some lifestyle factors could maybe slow down the progression or onset of dementia. Anything that we can do to be preventative, and I think society plays a key role in that. How do we raise awareness in terms of the connection between our lifestyle behaviors and health? So that people can be kind of motivated and empowered to, be proactive in their own health outcomes as they age.
Right. And I think we're coming to recognize that the brain is a vascular organ. So the things we do to maintain heart health, for example, exercising, trying to watch our weight, treating diabetes, certainly treating high blood pressure, that's also good for the brain.
Right.
And but that also raises economic issues because, for example, the American College of Cardiology has tightened the standards for high blood pressure to a level where even if your blood pressure is what we used to consider to be borderline, now it's considered high blood pressure. And some have estimated that among senior citizens, 3/4 of them will now be diagnosed with high blood pressure. So we want to prevent high blood pressure, we want to treat cardiovascular issues, but all that costs money.
Right. So, I think this begs a kind of almost a philosophical conversation and a values conversation a little bit. And that is, to what extent is the individual responsible for some of their health outcomes? And what is the role of society in supporting that prevention, right? And that investment in who we are. So with chronic diseases, high blood pressure, again, we kind of come back to some of the lifestyle behaviors that we can do. A lot of it could be outside of the control of the individual. So for example, if I was born and raised in poverty, then I'm going to experience some stressors and have an impact actually in my biology and in the way I grow, my brain function, et cetera, as a result of those stressors that are outside of my control. But then when we look at things that are within our control, exercise, strength training, the diet, proper sleep, managing stress, to the extent that we can, those are ways that I think if we can engage individuals as they age to think about their future and begin to manage their own behaviors so that they have better health outcomes, that will reduce societal costs. And I think that's where we need to go, and people need to be educated about that. But I don't think they really know.
I'm with you on that. Prevention is really where it's at.
Absolutely.
It's more effective. Yeah. It's a lot easier to really prevent an illness than to treat the end-stage illness. Yeah. And we also know that there seem to be different populations that are more at risk for some of these problems of aging. For example, with dementia, we know that it's more common among women. And we also know that individuals who sustain head trauma that used to be considered perhaps not significant may be prone to some chronic dementia. We also know that there are many kinds of dementia. It's not just Alzheimer's. There's also, I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but there's multi-infarct dementia, there's Lewy body dementia, there's dementia associated with Parkinson's. And, if we could prevent conditions, that's always better than treating them. And just raising awareness among men and women, among all ethnic groups, it's very important because the survival is quite different in different segments of our society, getting back to the social issues you raised. Right. And some individuals seem to do quite well in their older years, others less well. I know you're particularly interested, for example, in the health of women. Yes. Can you tell us about that a little bit? Yeah,
so, as you mentioned in your opening, is that, women tend to outlive men by 7 years. Women also experience greater income gaps than men. So older women, are in poverty rates twice the number that older men are. And women of color, even higher rates. So for example, older African American women 30% of them experience poverty. Well, how does this relate to things? Well, poverty is related to our overall health. It's related to both poverty as a cause and a consequence of health. And there's studies that show those links, studies of mortality, that people that live in poverty actually die earlier, the stresses that are associated with it, their inability to maybe access healthy foods. So a lot of people that live in poverty and older adults that live in poverty maybe live in food deserts and don't have access to healthy foods, maybe don't have the resources to purchase the healthy foods or the resources to purchase the kinds of things that would help them maintain their health. Gym membership, for example, or vitamins, or even some of their medications when they've been diagnosed with an issue. So that's a big discrepancy.
I think that that's so important. And although our time is limited, I know that you've done some original work interviewing women who are at risk, and you've done some really compelling documentary work. Perhaps we'll show a clip of that, or perhaps the entire clip. Can you tell us a little bit about that movie and how you came to make it?
Sure. So in my work in the community, I discovered that there were a lot of inequities and that a considerable number of seniors actually live in poverty, despite what some people may think. So I went out to interview people, seniors that were in poverty, and really what was some of the social issues that they experienced. And I found 4 women in Solano County and did an interview with them, basically a round-style interview talking about those things. And one of the things that happened is, first of all, one woman who was of Native American descent, she actually didn't have the opportunities because she grew up in poverty. So she kind of had a difficulty from the beginning all the way up in terms of, not graduating school, not being able to get good jobs, et cetera, and all of that impacted her health. There was a woman who was a nurse, a professional, who was very active, but then health issues, actually, I think was with her hands, caused her to have to, it was a disability that forced her to leave work. And as a result of that, she lost income. Another woman who actually who experienced divorce. She was also a professional woman, very active and engaged. She experienced divorce, lost retirement benefits that were that she would have received from her husband. Your incomes start dropping when you lose that as well. And then she also had health issues that, again, enabled her, prevented her from being able to work and continued to increase her income levels. Yeah. It's a tragic situation, and so many of them are isolated. Right. People don't appreciate. They face ageism, they face discrimination, and then just really declining resources that are available to help them. I could see even discussing it, you're moved by it. So, a movie really shows it better than talking about it. So let's take a look at that movie now. This is, what's the title of the documentary? It's, I believe, Senior Women in Poverty. Okay, Senior Women in Poverty. Let's take a look at it and discuss it a little further.
I was graduated from 8th grade. I had to go to work because my daddy could no longer work, and so therefore he couldn't support the family.
Back in 1998, I was injured on my job, so I had to go out on disability. I wound up having 2 surgeries because of the injury.
I had a barber shop and I bought a property, and I had the business for 25 years. I did like 20 haircuts a day.
I was a registered nurse, and I worked as such till I was about 58 years old, when some physical limitations forced me out of my career. So basically I lost my job.
Six years later, my husband divorced me. I got sick with a thyroid storm.
You can't get good jobs when you don't have a good education. You just got to do what you got to do.
As long as I could continue working, I was able to make my payments and pay my bills and everything, but I got sick and I couldn't work any longer, so I had to file for bankruptcy.
Forget about living from paycheck to paycheck. Let's talk about from day to day. Let's talk about day to day. Let's talk about eating versus buying your medicine. Let's talk about that.
once you start going to the doctor, it's a copay. $25, $30 to see the doctor, $25, $30 to get your lab tests, to get x-rays or any other specialized form of care that you need. You have the coverage, but you do not have the money to make the copays. For a lot of seniors, what happens is their health care stops right there.
Suddenly you're 40, and then pretty soon you're 60. You don't think about those times. You worry about, my daughter doesn't have enough money for groceries for her kids. You write a check and you pay the rent and you do this and you do that. And I really didn't take care of myself. I didn't have a plan. I lost everything.
In January, I started thinking about living in my car. I've done that before I moved in here. I lived in my car for a year. I had signed up for low-cost housing. My number came up in May. I said, what kind of information do you need? And she said, well, I need a birth certificate. And I said, I don't have a birth certificate. I was born at home. And they don't give you a birth certificate if you're born at home, not registered. I said, I have an affidavit of birth from my mother and one from my aunt. And she said, no, we can't take it, that you won't get the house. So I lined up my pills again, and I was going to take all my pills. But then I got housing, thank God, and that saved me. I don't have anybody to take care of me. I've took care of them all my life. My sisters and brothers, now they're all gone, so I have nobody to take care of me.
People who don't have families to turn to, we need to do something for them. Our country is too wealthy to keep them stuck in a complex.
We just want a little help, that's all.
That's right.
We're not asking for much,
No,
just
we're
a little
not.
help.
We're not.
It's not fun getting old.
No,
No.
see,
It's
no.
supposed to be fun.
But it happens.
Supposed to retire and have a good time and relax.
I had some plans, I'm here to tell you.
Yeah,
I
really.
had some plans.
Right.
Oh, don't look like it's gonna happen, but
Right.
First of all, congratulations on that project. I mean, talk about a picture being worth 1,000 words. That tells so much. The thing that strikes me is that these women really were successful career women, and yet they find themselves in dire straits in an older age. And you indicated that this is more of a problem for women than for men. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's more of a problem for women than men, in large part because of the gender pay gap. Because that women tend to be caregivers more than men, so you'll see lifetimes of working part-time or taking breaks and not really being able to build up the retirement system that they have. So it's those kinds of things because they outlive their husbands. Oftentimes, if they have a shared income to support their finances, when you lose that, if your income cuts in half or greater than half, 75%, 2/3 of it, then it's really hard to maintain your standard of living in those situations.
This issue of copays for doctor's appointments is something that I think a lot of people don't appreciate fully. If you can have health insurance, but when you see a doctor you have to pay $30, it's really pretty expensive when you're on a fixed income. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to some Europeans recently when I was in Europe, and even in countries that have socialized medicine, sometimes they have this copay system. And it's a real obstacle to health care for some individuals when they just can't come up with that money.
It's an incredible obstacle. One of the things that people have to choose is, do I eat or do I take my medication? I've had lots of conversations with seniors who are in that predicament. You know, the women in their health care costs, if you're in your 80s, $8,000 more a year, just in health care costs. And we don't anticipate that when we're younger and we're working, that we're going to have these potentially significant health care expenses. It's a barrier.
So obviously that's a very moving image that we saw in that movie. How can we do better? Without, necessarily getting too much into politics and so forth, just what can we as citizens do to do better in terms of helping this community?
Yeah.
You can talk about your real beliefs politically if you wish to, but
Okay.
just in general, how do we deal with this?
I think, and you'll have to forgive the emotion.
Yeah.
It's just that I know those women, and I know the desperation and the challenges that they have. I think one of the ways we can do things better is to open our eyes in terms of some of the situational factors that influence health and our economy, and the circumstances that can lead us into situations that we didn't anticipate or it's not of our own fault. I think we really need to be kinder to one another, and we need to reduce the isolation of seniors, because so many of them are isolated. And then so you add health issues on top of social isolation that can lead into mental health issues, depression, anxiety, and then they'll behaviors that will retreat into their apartments or into their homes and not really be physically active or socially active. And those are the kinds of things we need to be healthy and to maintain health, is to be out and talk and interact with people. So I think as a society, we can do more of that. I think we need to figure out how we support, groups to congregate together, senior centers, and a lot of them are going towards this notion around adult recreation centers just to attract younger populations, which is important for very important reasons. But is how do we provide opportunities for social engagement?
Okay. All right, let's change gears a little bit. When does old age really begin? Because, I've thought about this a lot as a geriatrician and just in my own life. And it's interesting, if you're in professional sports and you're in your mid-30s, you're considered old. They're talking about how much longer baseball players will be able to play who are in 28 or 30 or 32. If you're in business and you're 39, you're considered young. And I think the AARP starts sending people letters encouraging them to join when they're perhaps 50 or 55.
Yeah.
Geriatricians often talk about being old around 60, but we also talk about the oldest old at age 85, and then the centenarians at 100.
Right.
In Japan, they have so many people who are 100 years old that the award that they pass out from the government, which is a statue or something like that, is getting handed out so much that they're thinking of raising the threshold age to 110. So what I take from this is that becoming old is sort of a journey, and it's gradual. Do you have a sense of when old age begins?
Yeah, so first of all, I think age is a construct in the sense of old age or seniors is a construct that we use to categorize people. And it's funny because in the work that I've done, like with centenarians, I've seen people that are 100 years old, 105 years old, 80s, 90s, who are incredibly vibrant and active individuals. And they defy every ageist and stereotypical conception of aging. Just recently, actually, on America's Got Talent, there's a dancing couple, Quinn and Misha. Quinn is 71 years old, a 71-year-old woman. He's 36. You should see her dance. She's doing moves that, people in their 20s and 30s cannot do. It's just phenomenal.
So one of the ways that we get into old age and stay healthy is to be physically fit. I know that's a subject that you're very much interested in. And 1/3 of Americans are obese, 2/3 are overweight. How can we make progress to kind of help people stay healthy into old age through their own actions?
I think we need more role models. I think we need more role models. I think we need to tell them the benefits of it. I think we need to start with letting them know why it's important and how that goes ahead and contributes to their health and prevents and wards off disease, like chronic disease. I think we need more opportunities for engagement. So we need livable